Hey, welcome to Spectral Echoes, a collection of Reddit stories as told by people high as a kite. But it's Reddit, who knows, right? If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss out on these awesome horror stories. Now, let's get started.
Something terrifying once happened in your house. So strange and chilling that no one can explain it.
The cry from the old well. I don't know what's wrong with me anymore. I don't want to think about it, but it keeps repeating itself every time I close my eyes, making my sleep a living hell. I don't dare tell my wife. This will only make things worse. She must be as stressed as I am, even more so. My wife and I have been friends since childhood. We grew up in the peaceful suburbs, and the prospect of waking up every morning to the sound of honking cars and the suffocating smell of dust and smoke was not our dream. The hustle and bustle of city life and all the expenses were overwhelming. So when the opportunity came, an old house hidden among green fields and ancient trees, far from the hustle and bustle of the city, Elle and I did not hesitate to take it. It was a beautiful place, exactly what I imagined an ideal countryside life to be. The house had a nostalgic beauty, and I especially liked the old, mossy stone well in the corner of the garden. It had a mysterious, ancient look that I found very romantic. The first weeks passed like a dream. Elle, who was a freelance graphic designer, could work right at home, immersing herself in the quiet space and natural light. I also enjoyed coming home from work, breathing fresh air instead of car exhaust. We often sat on the porch, watching the sunset over the hills, and I believe that I had found a peaceful place for both of us. But something became extremely unstable, especially with Elle. It was almost, I don't know how to say it, maybe I wasn't sensitive enough that for a long time I didn't realize it. Sometimes I even doubted the authenticity of this. Anyway, Elle started talking about strange sounds. "Did you hear anything, Ben?" She asked one night when I was half asleep. "There's a cry. It seems to be from the garden." I opened my eyes and listened. Outside, there was only the sound of the wind whistling through the leaves and the crickets chirping. I admit I was quite careless, but I was really tired at the time and didn't hear anything strange. I yawned and replied softly, "No, I didn't hear anything, honey. I must be too tired." Elle frowned, looking disappointed. "No, I'm sure. It was very soft, but I heard it clearly, like a baby sobbing." I tried to calm myself down despite my eyes being droopy, gently patted her head, and reassured her. "Listen, you must have read too much nonsense." At that time, Elle had just taken on a few projects related to horror and haunting stories for Halloween. I thought she was just too obsessed with work. "Go to sleep. Tomorrow's a long day." Elle sighed, helpless, but closed her eyes. The following nights, the same thing happened. Always around 2 or 3 in the morning. We slept quite late. Elle shook me awake again, talking about the sobbing from the well. Each time I tried to listen, but to no avail. Outside was the absolute silence of the night. Gradually, I began to think that Elle was stressed. The move to a strange place and the pressure of freelance work must have made her nerves more sensitive than usual. "Elle, do you think we should, go somewhere to relax?" I was about to tell her to try seeing a doctor or consulting a doctor, but then I thought this was really too hurtful. So I changed my words, gently suggesting, "I noticed you haven't been sleeping well lately, and you've been hearing strange noises." But Elle knew me better than I knew myself. She looked at me with hurt eyes. "Do you think I'm crazy? I'm not making this up. I actually heard it. I didn't mean it like that," I quickly explained. And God, I felt so guilty at that moment. It was Elle. She was so important to me. I didn't want her to be sad, even a little. It's just, sometimes when we're stressed, we have little hallucinations. "I'm worried about you." Elle avoided my gaze. She knew I meant well, but she also knew I didn't believe her. That created an invisible distance between us. I wanted to speak, but ended up staying silent. I really didn't know what to say. That old well, damn it, I should have sealed it back then. Things were getting worse in many ways. Most obviously, the crying wasn't limited to the night anymore. One afternoon, I was sitting in the living room working when I heard Elle calling out from the garden. "Ben, come out here." I rushed out. She was standing near the well, her face pale. I just heard it, even in broad daylight. It was so clear, like someone was right down there. I checked again, wanted to lower my head to listen. Elle's face was full of panic. She hugged my arm, clearly not wanting me to do something she thought was dangerous. Her expression was so terrifying that I also swallowed my saliva unconsciously, stirring up an unnamed anxiety in me. I tried to reassure her, then slowly and carefully approached the well. But there was nothing. There was really nothing unusual. There was only the sound of birds chirping, the rustling of leaves. I sighed. The fear that had been bubbling up was replaced by a feeling of helplessness and, something that was almost like a sigh of relief, and at the same time I felt funny. In fact, at that moment, I secretly blamed myself for being too cowardly, easily influenced. I didn't blame Elle at all. I swear, on the contrary, I felt too useless, unable to be a support for her. I took my wife's hand and said softly, "Elle, I didn't hear anything. Did you see if any animals fell down there?" Elle was still trembling like a lamb, but because I was standing there, she was given strength. She slowly walked forward. Then we looked down into the well. Deep. The water below was pitch black. No sign of any life. I turned on my phone's flashlight and shone it down. It was still empty and quiet. Elle pulled out her phone. "I'll record it. You'll believe me." She turned on the recording function and held the phone close to the mouth of the well. She stood there for a minute, looking hopeful. When she listened back, she almost collapsed. The recording only contained the sound of wind, leaves, and cicadas. Not a single cry. I hugged her. "See, baby? There's nothing. It must have been my, imagination." Elle pushed me away, her eyes looking at me like I was an alien. "You don't understand. It's there. I'm sure of it." She went into the house, leaving me standing alone by the silent well, feeling confused and a little helpless. Our relationship began to strain. Elle became irritable, jumpy. She had severe insomnia, and the dark circles under her eyes became more visible. She spent more time reading articles about ancient wells, about urban legends. I tried to cheer her up, but every word was meaningless. She felt that I did not trust her. And it was true. I felt that she had a real problem, something like auditory hallucinations. One stormy night, the wind whistled through the cracks of the window like a ghostly howl. I had been sleeping soundly, but then I was awakened by a loud noise from the garden. I jumped up and saw that Elle was no longer lying next to me. The window was wide open, and I could see her silhouette in the flash of lightning. I rushed outside. The rain was cold against my face. The wind was so strong that I could barely stand. I saw Elle standing at the edge of the well, her head bent down. She was muttering something. "Elle, what are you doing?" I shouted, running to her side. She jumped back. Her eyes were wide, staring at me in horror, but also a little like she was coming out of a trance. Her lips moved. "Ben, I heard it. It called my name." I looked at the well. It was still dark, silent, as if nothing had happened. I could hear nothing but the rain and wind. "I can't hear anything, Elle. You keep saying strange things. You're scaring me." I held her tight, pulling her into the house. She was cold and shaking. I didn't know what to do. Her fear was so real, but what I saw and heard didn't confirm it. After that night, I decided I had to do something. I couldn't let Elle sink into this obsession. I suggested she see a therapist. Elle was vehemently against it at first, thinking I was thinking she was crazy. But in the end, because I was so insistent, and perhaps because she was starting to doubt herself, she agreed. At the same time, I installed security cameras around the garden, especially facing the well. I installed two regular ones and one infrared cam. I wanted concrete evidence to prove to Elle that there was nothing there, that everything was just her imagination. I thought, when she saw the completely quiet well on the camera, she would believe me. We watched the footage together. Every time she said she heard crying, I rewound the corresponding footage. The well was still there, silent. No people, no strange movements. "See, Elle, I try to keep my voice calm. Nothing. You were just standing there." Elle looked at me, her eyes filled with disappointment. "Do you believe me, Ben?" I didn't know how to respond. I believed she wasn't lying, but I couldn't believe what she was experiencing. It didn't stop with the crying. Elle started talking about a strange smell. "Do you smell it?" she asked me as we sat in the bedroom. A very strange smell, sweet but very creepy. Like wilted wildflowers, but with something rotten and putrid. She stammered in panic. I took a deep breath. "No, I just smell the scented candle I just lit." She shook her head. "No, this smell is different. It only appears in this room, especially at night." This time I tried to search. I walked around the room, sniffing every corner. Nothing. Just the smell of stale air and a hint of dried flowers from the vase. When I invited friends over, or when my mother visited, Elle would ask them if they smelled anything strange, but they all shook their heads. The scent only existed to Elle. I began to feel uncomfortable. The fact that she kept experiencing things that only she could feel made me not know how to react. I didn't want to upset her, but I couldn't accept such absurdities either. Elle's health was getting worse. She was constantly startled in her sleep, and she started talking about strange dreams. I dreamed about a little girl, Ben. She stood by the well, crying and calling my name. Her eyes were big and black. Her hair was messy. Elle's voice was whispering, as if she was talking to herself. I've never seen anyone like her. But why does it feel so familiar? I tried to reassure her, telling her that it was just stress dreams. But deep down, I was starting to feel uneasy. Her dreams were too vivid, too detailed. I started to research the history of the house and the surrounding area. I went to the local library, searched the internet. Nothing. No record of a missing child or any accident involving the well. Everything was normal. A few days later, I woke up to the sound of sobbing. It wasn't coming from Elle, but from somewhere far away, but very clear, as if it were right in the room. I sat up listening, and then I heard it. A faint whimper mixed with the wind. A child cry. My heart pounded. I looked over at Elle. She was sitting on the bed, her eyes wide open, staring out the window. I had never seen her so scared. "Did you hear that?" Her voice was trembling. "It's calling me. It wants me to come out there." Before I could say anything, she jumped up, not like a sleepwalker because she was clearly awake, and walked toward the door. But no, she looked completely lifeless. I quickly grabbed her hand. "Elle, what are you doing? Stop." She pulled her hand away. "I have to go. It's calling me." I tried to hold her back, but she had an uncanny strength. She broke free and ran out the door. I quickly turned on the hallway light, then the garden light, and ran after her. I saw her standing at the mouth of the well. The old stone well was dimly visible in the yellow light. And then I saw it. I swear, I wanted to think I was dreaming, hallucinating, or taking too much. But no, I was sober, damn it, 100% sober. A small, blurry figure stood next to Elle. It wasn't clear, but I could make out the shape of a little girl. It reached out to Elle, as if to take her hand. And then, for the first time, I heard it. A faint whisper, but clear and haunting. "Come down here," to me. My whole body stiffened. The sweet, pungent, rotten scent that Elle had told me about was now so strong that I felt nauseous. Goosebumps rose all over my body. Because Elle didn't know, but I did. It was the smell of a decomposing corpse. Don't ask me how I knew, I just knew, that's all. I rushed forward, hugged Elle tightly, and pulled her away from the well. "Elle, don't listen to it." When I turned to look, the figure was gone. The whispering stopped. The scent dissipated. Elle was left in my arms, shaking and sobbing. I finally understood how she felt. After that night, I had no more doubts. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was real. And it haunted Elle. I called the workers, asked them to fill the well immediately. I didn't want anyone, especially my wife, to have to face it again. The filling of the well helped Elle calm down. The crying and the scent were gone. Elle gradually fell asleep again, and we returned to our normal lives. She still went to see a psychiatrist, but this time it was to deal with the lingering trauma in her mind, not because people thought she was crazy. I was always there for her, listening to what she had to say, and never doubted her again. Because if I did, I would be just as crazy. After all, no one but us saw these things anymore, and I stopped trying to invite them to prove anything. Our lives returned to normal. I thought that everything was really over, that we had left that horrible past behind. But I was wrong. One night, I was watching TV downstairs when I heard a very small, very familiar sobbing sound coming from upstairs. I was startled, and quickly ran downstairs. The familiar sobbing sound rang out again. I don't know what to do. We filled in the well. I don't know what to do, move. Maybe it's time for us to think about it. I'll tell Elle. Maybe I should go back to the city or somewhere with enough noise and chaos. Anyway, the real fear is not the things you see, but the things that only you feel, and the things that the person you love the most is suffering in solitude.
Mumbling from the wall. I'm an architect. I don't say this to brag, I swear I don't even like this profession that much. I don't want to share too much about this, but in general, my life has always been attached to numbers, detailed drawings and solid architectural works. Almost absolutely precise. No room for estimation or guesswork. Reason and logic are the guiding principles for all my decisions. I am looking for a new place, a space enough for me to focus on my work and find balance again. And I just found a place that I think is perfect. My apartment is located in an old apartment building right in the city center. It is not new, even a bit old with exposed brick walls and wooden floors that creak when you walk. But I love the nostalgic look, love the convenience of just a few steps to the bustling downtown area. I told myself, a little noise from the neighbors is inevitable when living here. The first few nights passed quite peacefully. I quickly got used to the honking of cars from the street, the voices of people talking down the street, or the footsteps from the common hallway. I thought I had adapted well. In fact, these rhythms helped my interrupted sleep to be better and almost disappear. But then, something began to creep into the quiet night of my bedroom. It was a very small, vague noise, like someone mumbling. It was quite difficult to describe, to the point that I thought it was the sound of wind, insects or something, not necessarily a human noise. However, besides the repetition with many different pitches, I gradually grasped a few words in that mixed sound, and I confirmed that it was the sound of people talking. First, I just thought it was the neighbors. The apartment next door was probably talking late on the phone, or a couple arguing quietly. I didn't think much of it. You know, right? The murmuring came regularly every night, always around the time I was about to fall into a deep sleep. It wasn't loud enough to startle me, but it was enough to jolt me out of my trance. I started paying more attention, and a nagging feeling crept in. The murmuring was both like and unlike any language I'd ever heard. It was just meaningless syllables, repeated over and over again like some strange chant. I could make out some of the words, but not the words put together, that was about it. I must be oversensitive, I told myself. Why should I care about this weird stuff? I tried to ignore it, turning on soft music or wearing headphones to drown out the sound, even though I knew it wasn't good. Believe me, when you start to enter your 30s, sleep is a blessing to be cherished, not something you want. But it was no use. The murmuring seemed to penetrate the soundproofing, penetrate everything to reach my ears. I felt like I was going crazy, enough to wake the couple in the next room to see what they were talking about. Still, I didn't have the courage to do it. I was helpless, I was a coward, I admit it. It's just that, gradually, the murmuring didn't only appear at night anymore. Sometimes, when I was sitting working on my laptop in the bedroom in the afternoon, I would catch a glimpse of it. Very faint, but enough to make me stop, lift my head and listen. The feeling of being watched or something lurking began to creep in. I couldn't see anyone, but it felt like someone was right on the other side of the wall, listening to my every move. My privacy was being invisibly invaded. One evening I couldn't stand it anymore. I pressed my ear against the bedroom wall, trying to hear better. My heart pounded. The murmuring immediately became clearer, closer, as if the speaker were right behind the thin plaster. I could even feel a cold draft coming from the wall, even though the room was still warm. I told my best friend Lisa about it. "You should ask the neighbors out for coffee, Sarah," Lisa said teasingly. "Maybe they're just rehearsing for some club. Maybe you'll get invited to their show and meet some interesting guys." I looked at her. "You don't understand. It's not normal conversation. Weird." And it only happens when you're alone. I didn't know how to describe it because it made me sound even more unsettled. Lisa shrugged. You're probably just hallucinating because you're working too much. Get some rest. She didn't believe me. No one did. Made me feel alone. I started to doubt myself. Was I so stressed that I was hearing things that weren't there? Despite my best efforts to convince myself that it was all in my imagination, the murmuring did not go away. In fact, it got worse. First, it was just gibberish. But then, I began to notice a change in its tone. It became tense, angry, even hateful. I could no longer understand any of the words. It was more and more like the old languages in movies. It sounded like it, but it wasn't, and I didn't understand a damn thing. But I could sense a strong negative vibe coming from the sound. It was no longer a harmless murmur. It was a curse, a clear resentment. I called the landlord and reported the noise. He seemed surprised. The apartment next door belongs to Mr. and Mrs. Olson, a very nice old couple. They don't go out much, but they're definitely not the kind of people who make a lot of noise, Sarah. He kept repeating it, clearly having a special relationship with the couple next door. I didn't care, I just wanted to resolve this matter as quickly as possible. I even ran over to the house next door to see what was going on. And I did, but the result was still hopeless. Judging from their attitude, and especially the way the room was arranged, my bedroom and study were next to their kitchen. At most, I would only hear the sound of cooking. They basically couldn't make me hear that noise. Luckily, the landlord agreed to send a worker to check the wall. I felt relieved, and quickly made an appointment as soon as possible. The worker came, checked carefully, even drilled a few small holes to look inside. The wall is completely hollow and dry, Sarah, he concluded. There are no problems with the pipes or the structure. It's probably just noise from the apartment above or below. I looked at the wall, no cracks, no signs of anything unusual. The workman and the landlord left, leaving me alone in the eerie silence of the room. And then the murmuring came again, clearer, closer than ever. But just now, when they were here, there had been no sound at all. Now I had no doubt. This was not the noise from the neighbors. This was something else. Something directed at me. The incident reached its climax the following night. The murmuring was no longer meaningless syllables. It became a melody. I covered my ears, but even my brain betrayed me. It was like an old cassette tape, playing over and over again until I went crazy and realized. A lullaby. It was an old, monotonous melody, as if it had been played long ago. But it carried an indescribable horror and disgust. It was not a gentle lullaby to put someone to sleep. It was a song of despair, filled with endless anguish and lamentation. I was awakened by that lullaby. It echoed in my head over and over again. I jumped up, my heart pounding, sweat pouring down my back. I tried to cover my ears, but it was no use. The melody was burned into my mind. I couldn't concentrate on my work. Complex architectural drawings became difficult and unbearable with the haunting sounds. I became tired, irritable, and forgetful. I told my colleagues about the lullaby, but they just looked at me with concern, eyes full of pity. I realized that I was isolated in this experience. No one could understand what I was going through. And that was far more terrifying than the strange lullaby itself. I didn't want to be like my mother, not at all. I started avoiding the bedroom, sleeping on the hard sofa in the living room. But the murmuring and the lullaby still haunted me in my dreams. Now I couldn't tell when I was really hearing them and when I thought I was hearing them, to the point where I didn't even believe it myself. The next morning, after I woke up from a fitful sleep on the sofa, I decided to go back to the bedroom. I needed to change before going to work. When I walked in, I was shocked by the sight. On the bedroom wall, just above my headboard, was a charcoal drawing. It was a grotesque shape, like a distorted, pained face with empty eyes. It exuded a look of despair and hatred. Jump back. My heart was pounding in my chest. I ran to touch the wall, but there was no charcoal mark. The wall was completely smooth under my fingertips. But when I stepped back, the drawing was still there, clear and haunting like a scar on my mind. With trembling hands, I took a picture of the wall and sent it to Lisa. "Did you see anything?" Texted. I knew it was useless, really, because I tried to record, film, or do anything that could prove that I wasn't crazy at least, and that those things weren't my imagination. But the results were all disappointment. Few minutes later, Lisa called back. "Sarah, are you okay? I didn't see anything. It was just a normal white wall. You should see a doctor right away." Seriously. Lisa's words were like a bucket of cold water thrown in my face. No, rather, it emphasized my helplessness. She didn't see. No one saw. Only me. But when I raised my head, everything had disappeared, and I couldn't see it anymore. I began to wonder, could this be the beginning of madness? Just like my mother. Before she left, she was also very calm, gentle, and then slowly went crazy. The murmuring became more frequent now, and sometimes I felt like it was hypnotizing me. I found myself mumbling along to the sounds without even realizing it. It was as if something was trying to take over my mind, to control me. The lullaby echoed constantly in my head, making it difficult to concentrate on work. I became tired, irritable, and alarmingly forgetful. I knew I couldn't live like this forever. One night, the murmuring became very clear. It was no longer meaningless syllables. I heard it clearly, repeating the same phrase over and over again. Find me. Inside. The voice was desperate, painful, and a little pleading. I jumped up from the sofa, my heart pounding. I stared at the bedroom wall. There was no doubt about it. Something terrible was buried there, and it wanted me to find it. I couldn't live in this state of doubt and fear any longer. I had to move, even if it meant losing my deposit and more. But before that, I had to figure out what the noises were. I had to know if I was normal or not. I decided to take action, and I did that week. I hired a professional wall inspection company, the kind with the most advanced equipment. I didn't tell them about the mumbling or the drawings. I just said I was concerned about the old structure of the building and wanted to check for any cavities or foreign materials inside the bedroom walls. They came with a full complement of equipment, including metal detectors and ultrasonic detectors, along with a bunch of other gizmos I didn't know the names of, let alone how to use them or what they did. But it was reassuring, even a little challenging. You know, the feeling of science against the supernatural horror of those old Ghostbusters. I pointed to the spot where I often heard the mumbling. The worker moved the probe. A high-pitched beep sounded as it passed over a particular spot. "There seems to be something here, Sarah," the worker said. "It's not a pipe or a wire. It seems to be a solid object." They began to carefully chisel away at the wall. Layer after layer of plaster, old brick after old brick was removed. I stood there, my heart pounding, holding my breath as I watched. And then, a small cavity gradually appeared. Inside the cavity was an old wooden box, wrapped in rotten black cloth. I asked them to take it out. The smell of mold and decay filled my nostrils. When the box was opened, I found a small bird skeleton and a bone amulet engraved with strange symbols, along with an old parchment scroll. The workers and the landlord looked at me curiously. They saw only the bird skeleton and the amulet. "Some kind of ancient charm or some custom," the landlord muttered, finally dropping his scowl. I wasn't sure if he knew anything about it, but he was clearly shaken by what I said. This saved me some of the compensation I paid later. The workers handed it to me. I didn't want to take it. I wasn't sure if they could see what I was seeing, but I took it anyway. I unrolled the parchment with trembling hands. Charcoal scribbles, identical to the ones I'd seen on the wall, appeared. And there was handwriting in an ancient language, something I clearly didn't understand and shouldn't have. I spent the rest of the day searching the internet for the language, for the symbols on the amulet. Finally, I was able to translate part of the text. It was a curse from a nomadic tribe, written by people who died in pain and filled with hatred. The shaman would perform a ritual to trap them even after death, forcing them to remain silent forever. The soul would be trapped there forever, tortured by loneliness and their own muttering. After the box was found and taken away, the muttering disappeared completely. I also did not see the charcoal drawing anymore. The bedroom was quiet again. My life returned to normal, but I still quickly checked out and moved out. I knew I had touched something terrible. I would never feel safe in that apartment again. Even though the muttering had disappeared, the fear was still there, deeply rooted in my mind. I decided to move out immediately, leaving everything behind. I tried to rationalize it all, to find a scientific explanation for what I was experiencing. But it was no use. The murmurs, the lullabies, the charcoal drawings, it was all too real. Sometimes in the dead of night, when I lay alone in my new apartment, I could swear I could hear a faint murmur in my ear. And a rotting scent wafted through, reminding me of the terrible secret that had been buried in that old wall. I knew that, even though I had left that place, a part of it, a part of that haunting, would stay with me forever. I was freed, but I was also forever changed. Bonus. Some of you are curious about why I am so obsessed with proving what those whispering sounds are. Some people also ask about my mother if something happened to her. I don't want to talk too much about this. I'm not ready to do that yet. However, you can understand that these two things are related. Well, my mother passed away when I was very young. She killed herself because of depression, or at least that's what I've been told. I don't remember clearly, and I didn't witness the scene that day. And I know this is quite strange, but I'm not going to delve into this issue anymore. All I know is that my mother's family has a genetic tendency towards insanity. That's what people in my hometown call it. And that she's not the only one who shows this. I don't blame her, but there's a part of me that's afraid of being seen as like her. I want to prove that it's not true. I'm doing better. Hopefully tomorrow will be even better. Hope so.
If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss out on these awesome horror stories.